So I'm Valdis Vizulis. I'm 65 years old. I'm Latvian, and I'm literally all Latvian. Came to the United States in 1958 with my family. I have a twin brother. I have a sister that's a year older, and a brother who's about 7 years older than I am. And my parents and my brothers and sister and we all came over in 1958 from England. So I was born in Darlington, England. In 1955, my parents were refugees out of Latvia, and they were both from the same community, same little village, close to the Lithuanian border in southern Latvia. It's not a big country at all. And they fled the country of Latvia in about 1943 or so. The German Nazis had come through prior to that, maybe 1941 or so. The Russians came through after that, pushing the Germans out of the country, and then the Germans came back, and then there was a lot of turmoil because ultimately the Russians, the communists, came back into Latvia. My parents fled. My father was a soldier in the Latvian army, and my mother was just a farm person out of the community she was in, and they ended up leaving everything behind. And my parents in Germany, in a refugee camp where they were stationed, where they were for 3 or 4 years in this refugee camp with a bunch of other Latvians. They met there and got married. They knew each other because they were from the same little village in Latvia, and they decided that they were going to try to get to England, where my father was able to work. He was by trade a tailor, from generations of tailors, working with clothing. And my dad ended up going with us, or before the kids were born, with his wife to England, to an area called Leeds or Darlington, which is northeastern Great Britain, and they were there for about 8 years while they were waiting from 1948 until 1957. They were in England waiting to emigrate to the United States. My mother's family had already emigrated straight from Germany to the U.S., and they were sponsored by a doctor out of Niles, Michigan, who sponsored them to become U.S. citizens. And once they went through that process, then they brought the rest of the family over. And while my parents were in England, all the kids were born. And in 1958, we were ultimately able to get to the United States with the same sponsor, and we ended up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is the town where my aunts and uncles were living. And we moved to the U.S. in 1958.